another video. As promised, I've literally filmed this video back to back with the other one. Started editing it and was like, oh, I've got to do another video. So now I've done another video. So as you can see, the orbiting star has still decided to resume growth. Really hope it goes down very soon because I'm starting to really dislike it. It's horrible spots, aren't they? You just want to touch it, but you know it gets it worse if you touch it. So you can't win. You can't win. Anyway, I was a lot more playful in my other video, and I think I will continue that trend because, depending on what you guys say, of course, because I think, you know, a bit of lightheartedness is good. I'm not naturally a very serious person. I'm normally more playful, so I think I need to translate that through. But there is a subject that I do want to talk about, and that is my struggles with OCD. So I think OCD is what's an umbrella term, meaning that there are different types of it. It's not just one thing that means one other. It doesn't necessarily mean that one person has to flick a light switch before they leave a house. It can be many things. For me, my OCD is a few things. As I've gotten older, they have transformed over time. One of the ones that I still continue to struggle with is intrusive thoughts. So my head will allow itself to get carried away with a thought process that I'm particularly not very comfortable with. So when I was younger, I used to struggle with hypochondria, which, if you don't know, is someone who is convinced that they're unwell. And it makes them do certain things to make sure they're not unwell, even though you've already convinced yourself you have some sort of illness that's going to kill you. It's a very hard thing to have, and it's not something that can just be playful. Don't worry, I haven't got a ghost, it's just my back is touching my houseplant. I'll tuck in a bit more, is that better? Better. Yeah, but I'm too close now. Now you can just see this dreadful spot. Oh, terrible. Anyway, focus. So with many things, I struggled with thinking that I was very unwell, that I had many problems, and I think that's kind of where my OCD began to start. I mean, if we spoke to my mum, she would say that I'd always been quite tidy. As a child, very young, I wasn't. In fact, my mum used to clean my room quite a lot. But as I got older, early teens, I started to be very specific about how I had things, where they were put. If they were moved, I wouldn't like it. And that translates now into me having my own home. When I eventually show you my home, which I might do, if you want to see how I live, I will show you. But I do live very cleanly. That's not just because of a OCD, that's just probably because of pride. I don't want people coming into my home thinking that I live like a troll. I don't live like a troll. There are times that I really don't want to wash up. I mean, who likes washing up? I mean, washing up is just not fun. But having a clean kitchen, now that is fun. I love having a clean kitchen, so that's why I wash up. So, listen kids, wash up because it makes you have good kitchens. Advice of the day. Let's skip over that, shall we? That didn't go very well. I'll edit that out because that's silly. That's just silly. Focus, Kyle. So this is what I mean. I'm a big procrastinator. If you haven't guessed yet, every little thing that happens in my life, I'm like, oh, distracted, which I need to not do because a lot of my things define me by focus, and I need to focus on things. This being one of them. So back to the subject that we were talking about. Yes, OCD. So I have struggled with hypochondria all my life, worrying that I'm going to be ill. If I find a spot on my skin, I'm convinced that I've got a disease. I'm convinced that I've got a month to live, and then that's it. I'm gone. And I still struggle with that even today. Every other day there'll be something small that I'll be thinking, oh no, what's this? And most of that is fueled by OCD. So it's the intrusive nature of the thoughts. So it's nagging you. It's telling you, think this, think that. If you don't get it looked at, you're going to die. Or if you do get it looked at, they're going to tell you you're going to die, and therefore you're going to die. It's really quite complex. And my ways of dealing with OCD, away from medication, which I will do a separate video on when it comes to medication, because that's something that I've had experience with, and that will be a separate video. Not sure if it'll be my next one, but it'll be one of them soon. My battles with antidepressants. But post medication, my strategies to deal with OCD have been what a lot would consider a common one, and that's trying to break the cycle of those thought processes that make us do rituals, these things that make us check something twice or 3 or 4 times or so many times, and many people, they can check hundreds of times before they're convinced and comforted with leaving their home or doing something else, which to me must be devastating, because luckily I've never experienced anything like that, but I certainly know what it feels like to have to double check things even when I'm sure that it's fine, because I will convince myself about 3 or 4 things that would happen if I don't check, which again is a very common nature of OCD. And I think, when the time is right, I'll have a much broader spectrum of OCD and talking about it. But I think I wanted just to sort of give a rough idea of my strategies dealing with it, and the actual recipe for the way of dealing with it sort of stems from something else, and that was actually understanding how thoughts over time fade, or things that you latch onto fade over time. And I had always been quite good at learning that thoughts that you have now might not be there down the line. And I think the birth of the OCD was at the origins of that thought process, because I was telling myself throughout the years of these problems that I face, and I'm not going to be able to do this, I'm not going to be able to do that, I'm going to struggle with this. That was purely on the basis of not being able to convince myself otherwise. So I was sitting there thinking, this is going to happen to me. No matter what I do about it, I can't stop thinking about it, so therefore it's going to happen. The way of dealing with that was actually putting myself in that situation, was actually saying to myself, well, am I going to do that? Is that going to actually happen to me, or am I going to say do that to someone, even though I'm fearing it? And the point is that I realised is that the reason why I'm not going to do it is because I'm fearing it, and the anxiety of that is fueling the OCD. If I didn't fear that thing, I'm more likely to do it. So the fact is that I'm fearing myself doing something like that is my brain overthinking the idea, but also me telling myself that, well, if I'm so scared of doing it, why would I do it? So then I transformed this ideology in my mind of actually being able to process this idea that when you have a bad thought, that isn't your brain telling you to do it. It's reminding you continuously, exhaustingly, why you shouldn't do it. And I think it's very easy for those things to get muddled up. And it can be quite distressing, obviously, because that's why OCD is a thing. To many people, OCD isn't a blessing, it's a curse. I've learned, and a lot of people have learned, to include OCD in my daily life to allow me to do things that I'm proud of. But of course, it doesn't have its drawbacks. It does have its drawbacks, sorry. So one of those things was, again, intrusive thoughts. So it was that constant nagging of a negative thought that wouldn't stop. And going back to what I was saying, it was that transition period of actually understanding that the negative thought is my brain telling me something that I shouldn't be doing, rather than actually doing it. And when I began to understand that, it didn't just go away, because obviously I still struggle now, but it made me master the idea that my brain is just being overactive, and all I needed to do is work on not the thought, but getting my brain less overactive about things. And the way I did that was understanding how over time my thoughts change. And I said to myself, okay, well, I have this thought now, but I've had bad thoughts before. So isn't there a chance that this thought will just fade with them? And they do. And those thoughts do go over time. And I've learnt to begin to realise that even though I may have a distressing thought right now, it also means that there's a chance that that thought will just go back into the history books with all my other thoughts. And not only is that me allowing other future thoughts to be processed better, but it's actually remedying the possibility of never having them again, because I'm realising that there's no point latching onto a thought that brings me distress, which is very common in OCD, when I know that that thought is going to be something that I'm going to look back and think, well, why did I find that so distressing? And that began my process of healing. And going forward, it became easier for me to discipline myself. And there was something that happened recently, a few days ago. I'm trying to remember what it was. I have to come back to it. It was something where I was telling myself, oh, okay, this was a very simple one. I convinced myself that I didn't put deodorant on my left arm properly, and I felt that I had done more on my other arm. When I know that I could tell by seeing, I know it's going to sound really gross, but I could tell that there was the same level of moisture on my both arms, and I was like, so I must, I can't smell any bad odor. I must be, quite hygienic now. But my brain was telling me, you've got less on this arm, you've got less, you need to put more on here. And I was telling myself that something bad's going to happen if I don't put it on. Someone's going to smell me later on, and they're going to smell body odor, and I'm going to be really, really embarrassed or really, overwhelmed by that. And then what that does is that it isn't the embarrassment that's the problem, it's the solidification of the fact that your OCD had beaten you. It was actually telling you that, yes, you didn't put enough on, you've now failed. And it means that every future event that happens, you take OCD more seriously. And that is a very detrimental and damaging ideology, because what it means is that you've essentially given OCD power. And of course, when that does happen, it can go either way. You can learn from it and go, okay, well, I remember to do it next time, and it can be kind of self-preserving. But for someone like me, that would be very mortifying. It would be very distressing for someone to go, oh, you smell. And it would be like, well, I knew it. I knew I didn't put enough on. But what I forget to realise is that the smell might not have been coming from the arm that I didn't put enough on. It could be the other arm. And I try not to let myself get to that point where I'm convincing myself what arm was it, because I'm trying to convince myself before it happens, that event happens, that it is just in my head. And I went out and I was fine. And I was telling myself before I went out, I'm going to smell bad. I know it. But I'd gone out, did what I was going to do, and nothing happened. And I had completely forgotten about it. And at that point, I had beaten my OCD at that point. I told it, you haven't won. Those thoughts are not going to beat me. I still feel normal. I haven't gone insane. I haven't lost my mind. All these things that before I do that thing that I'm going to go and do, that OCD is convincing myself of, didn't win me over. And that was a really powerful thing for me, because I realised I had control. And what it allowed me to do, like I just said, is that it didn't stop me from the idea of having future problems. But what it allowed me to do was realise that actually, if another problem happens again, that I have the opportunity to master it and get over it, and begin, if not finish, that healing process of how impacting negatively OCD can be for people. And, of course, there are many different terms and ideas and umbrella terms for OCD and what it can do for people. But for me, and maybe for you guys that struggle with it, because I know it's a very common thing, you actually could probably take some word from this and actually understand that it's all about control. It's all about taking discipline and going, right, okay, I am my own body. This is what I need to be doing. And once you gain that power, once you realise that nothing's going to happen to you, you haven't died, you haven't lost someone, you haven't, all these things that you're convincing yourself that OCD is going to have power over, you realise all it is just your thoughts. It's your body protecting you, but too much. It's a bit like, I don't know, it's a bit like having sorry, that was a notification. Always the moment I'm going deep and it has to come through like that. It's a bit like putting 20 plasters over a small graze. It's like, it's great that you've enabled yourself complete protection, but is it completely necessary? Do you need to really go that far ahead? Do you really need to worry that's to that point? And that's what OCD is fundamentally. It's your body really trying to overprotect you when it doesn't need to be overprotected. Just one plaster can be enough. And it's understanding where those plasters go and what those plasters do and what the damage is to your body that you can heal. Because sometimes a bandage is better than a plaster. So it does depend on the process and what you're thinking. But for me, my analogy very much is that if I don't need to put more than one plaster on, I won't do it. But even when my body's telling me, you need to cover yourself more, you need to look after yourself more, because if you don't, something bad's going to happen to you. I then realise, well, what's going to happen? What is going to go wrong? So I think for me, that journey of understanding self-discipline has allowed me to, I wouldn't say master my OCD, but understand that it's not untamable. And that's the point, isn't it? Is that, like I've always said, it's that success is never judged by you finishing something, it's your attempt to finish it. That's where the magic lies. And that's where people like you and I can benefit from that. It's the understanding and respecting that we can't always be in control, but trying to be in control is where the reward is. And that's why we should feel good about ourselves when we try and make a difference to how we deal with things in life and how we help others and treat others. So that to me is a very big deal, and that's the philosophy that I live by. So yeah, that's a broad understanding of kind of, not broad, I'm going to do a broad one, a focused, a centered view on OCD and how I've learned to deal with it. But I will do a longer video where I will talk about my struggles with it and other things that I've had to deal with over the years, and possibly a bit more details about what sort of thoughts that I had, some of which are ridiculous, some of which are very horrendous, but to me are equally important, because at the end of the day I wouldn't have had those thoughts if I didn't feel they were relevant to me. So like with you, anyone who says to you that, you know, don't think that, it doesn't matter, it's not important, ignore what they say, because to you it matters to you. That process that you go through, that journey that you have, is relevant and important to you. You may think that my thoughts that I have that I overthink are ridiculous. That's fine, because I know that they are. I don't need you to tell me that, but I'm not expecting myself to tell you that your thought processes, your struggles with OCD are no less relevant than mine. And it all comes back to talking about and understanding these things. And when we do that, we begin to break down the barriers of stigma and taboos and all those things that we think we shouldn't talk about, we can talk about. And when we do, we begin that process of acceptance and living in a more harmonious and loving world. I've done it again. I've gone really deep. That's just me. I'm just a deep, philosophical individual who likes talking about things that are somewhat important. Very important. But anyway, I hope you like this video. I'm not sure how long. 16 minutes. God, it goes quick, doesn't it? It goes really quick. I hope you liked it. I'm planning to do a bit more. You know, I know that I sit here and talk to you like this. It's very intimate. But I do plan to do more things out and about, going places, showing you a bit about my life, about what I love. These are things that are important to me. You know, so I think I respect the fact that it can be a little bit jarring just listening to my voice for 15 or 16 or 20 minutes a session. So thank you for persevering with me, and you know, we will continue this journey together and learning about myself and others and how we can learn to live better, and how I can do better content for you guys. Again, drop me an email, tell me what you want to see next, what you love and what you don't like, and I will try and incorporate that into my future content. But anyway, thank you very much for joining. If you liked this video, give it a like. If you didn't, that button works really well too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.